debate. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's with great sobriety that I stand in the House today to discuss this issue with regards to the ongoing conflict that is taking place with the Azeris going after the Armenians who reside within the Nagorno-Karabakh region. We are receiving news day by day of grave atrocities that are being committed at the hands of the Azeris. There are people who are starving. There are people who have lost their lives. There are people who desperately need medicine and are not being granted that. There are individuals who are separated from other loved ones because of this conflict. This conflict, of course, has gone on for quite some time, but it is most recently that its intensity has heightened to a significant extent. And so it is with that heightened crisis that my colleagues and I stand in the House today and advocate on behalf of the people of Armenia for peace to be restored to the region. And it is our belief that Canada, as a peacekeeper, does have an important role to play in a diplomatic regard. And so it is to that end that we stand today in this place and advocate. Now, the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan in this region of Nagorno-Karabakh has a long history. It has been, there have been two major wars that have been fought just within the last 3 decades. And so it is not without its complications or many different angles to be considered. But at the end of the day, the thing that must be accounted for is the fact that there are people, innocent people, who are residing within this region, who are being put in harm's way, who are being prevented from being able to access the necessities of life. And that must weigh heavily on the conscience of every single member of Parliament. Now, I had the opportunity to travel to Armenia in 2017 and to see firsthand some of the conflict that has taken place in the past and that is taking place now. Now, of course, in 2017, things were a lot different than they are now. I would never dream of going into this particular region at this point in time. But when I went in 2017, there was certainly a military presence, both from the Armenian side and the Azerbaijan side. And I had the opportunity to actually walk that military line, if you will, and see the separation and see the topography and the geography and how this is all situated. But more importantly, I not only had the opportunity to see that, but I had the opportunity to visit with the people of the region and to hear their stories of wanting to preserve their language and their way of life, their culture, and wanting to be respected for that. I heard the stories of a people who have gone through one atrocity after another and who have been proponents of peace. Unfortunately, the other side, Azerbaijan, is not wanting to grant that to them. And so, unfortunately, those folks who live within this specific region, Nagorno-Karabakh, are forever living in this place of unsettledness, unrest, and fear. During my time there, I had the opportunity to go into several homes. Now, these weren't homes where people were living, they were actually homes that had been vacated. And the reason they had been vacated is because they were on the line where war had taken place. And I can remember explicitly walking into one home, and there were actually pictures hung on the wall. There were 2 photographs that caught my attention, and then there were actually a couple of drawings done by children. They were colored in, and it was evident that there was a family that had lived here. There were beds with old mattresses, and there were still a few plates and different necessities, I suppose you could say, within the kitchen. But other than that, it was largely vacated. As I wandered through the home, I entered into one room where there was actually a blood stain on the floor and blood splatters on the wall that had been stained there. And I asked my guide what had taken place, and he went on to tell me that there was in fact a family that had lived in this home, and that this family was actually attacked. They were an innocent family, civilian family, but unfortunately resided in a region that Azerbaijan wanted control over. And so as a result of that, life was lost. As a result of that, a house was turned into wreckage. As a result of that, the remaining individuals within this family who survived the attack, again, there was loss of life, but those that survived were displaced and moved into another region of Armenia where they would be safer. For these folks to live in this type of upheaval, for these folks to live in this type of fear, for these individuals who live in this region to exist in such a state is not okay. And for Canada to stand idle and to remain quiet on this matter is also not okay. We cannot find ourselves silent. If we do, I fear that we are then perhaps siding with the enemy. And so it is important for us to speak out on behalf of those individuals who are innocent, on behalf of those individuals who are simply wanting to live a good life, preserve their language, their culture, their way of being, and be respected and honored within their historic homeland. And that right is currently being robbed from them. Now, there was a peace agreement that came about. In fact, there's been a peace agreement, and then it's been called off, and then there's been a peace agreement, and then it's been called off, and then there's been a peace agreement, and then it's been called off. This is the history of the region. But I think what's so grave about what's taking place right now is the fact that Azerbaijan is going into this region and attacking innocent civilians. Azerbaijan has blocked access to necessities, such as food or medicine or the movement of people. And the reason why this matters is because these individuals are not there taking up weapons of war, but rather simply trying to exist and live a peaceful life. They want their children to go to school. They want to own businesses and be able to pay their bills. They want to be able to sow seed into the ground and reap a harvest. These are just normal individuals who are looking to live life. But due to the disruptions within the region, due to the attacks that are coming from Azerbaijan, these folks are being put in peril's way. And so again, I would plead with this House that, sure, Canada can just sit on its hands and allow for this to just transpire, allow for the loss of life to take place, allow for these folks to no longer be able to enjoy life. Or this House can make a statement and advocate for these individuals and advocate that their freedom be restored, that their homelands be honored. And of course, I'm advocating that we would do this in a very diplomatic way. But nevertheless, diplomacy and inaction are not the same thing. They're not synonymous. And I would argue that right now, Canada is simply existing in a realm of inaction. But we have an opportunity to change course. And my fear is that if we don't do something, that we will have a repeat of what happened 107 years ago, where the Armenian people found themselves at the hand of a genocide. And we are already being warned by experts that this is in fact where this is going, that this is headed in the direction of annihilating a people group, which is genocide. And so again, based on that evidence, based on those experts who are taking intel from the ground and feeding it to us as the House of Commons, I would plead with those in this place that now is the time to act. We should not allow for loss of life to ensue, so much so that we finally are compelled, but rather out of a place of deep love and respect and honor, out of a desire for peace, out of honor for our legacy as a country that is known for peacekeeping and peacemaking. I would plead with those in this House that we agree to take action, that we agree to engaging in diplomatic conversations around what it takes to establish peace. And I would ask that this House would even go so far as to considering sanctions, because action must be taken, because innocent lives are at risk, and Canada doesn't stand for that.
questions and comments, questions et commentaires.